Next, we will have Christina Fox and Maritza Silva Farrell. Christina is from the New Immigrant Community Empowerment, and Maritza is from the Alliance for Greater New York. Align.
Hi, good afternoon. I want to thank you for having me today. My name is Christina Fox. I am the Worker Center Coordinator at New Immigrant Community Empowerment in Queens. I'm actually a social worker by trade. I graduated with my MSW from Columbia University in Social Enterprise Administration and Services to Immigrants and Refugees. And it just so turns out that the construction industry in New York is in need of a social worker. So in fact, what I do with NICE is a member-led organization of immigrant workers in Jackson Heights, Queens. We work with immigrants to build social, political, and economic power in their communities. And we also operate a community job center. This job center works collaboratively with the workers to agree with fair wages to their employers, as well as work agreements and safe working environments. The center serves as a safer alternative for workers as opposed to fraudulent employment agencies or pretty exploitative day labor corners, and is actually starting to serve as a really good alternative to a community-sensitive alternative to programs like Workforce One and things like that, really helping develop the workforce of our community. We also offer workforce development trainings, health and safety certification courses, work heavily in Know Your Rights and popular education, and assistance in uncovered wages and referrals to critical services. We're located next to one of the largest day labor stops in the country in 69th Street in Queens. We are really actually a lot of us are the Latinos that you're talking about. We are the people of color. We are the immigrant workers that we've been talking about today, and I appreciate the mentions from everybody that's given testimony and from yourselves included. Our members are seeking this workforce support. They're asking for these trainings. We need increased access to trainings for higher safety and health standards in their workplaces. At this point, our workers refuse unsafe employers because we have that power through the worker centers. A lot of these employers are non-union, and they're repeat offenders. Usually, we have issues with unpaid wages. There's a very good chance that there's other issues on the workplace. With our work is essentially dedicated in workers' rights, specifically regarding that, wage theft, health and safety, and fair jobs. Within the last year, our job center has exploded, and we've really been able to provide a lot more workforce development, a lot of these trainings we're discussing, and dynamic on-the-job support, so ongoing relationships with these workers who are not only our participants, but also our members. Essentially, our workers are the eyes and ears on these sites that are otherwise go uninspected or are non-union. They're getting their training, and they're able to evaluate their workplaces and communicate with us with issues, and we're able to communicate to the proper authorities or create an intervention with their employer. We want to work for responsible employers. The innovative dynamic of the job center really kind of gives us this, engages workers in their capacity development and their workforce training. And as they're seeking work or looking for work, they're also organizing these health and safety evaluations on their workplace, and also action plans as to how to improve their job placements. And so as we're advocating for the workers are also advocating for themselves. I won't go into too much length. I think you do have my testimony. But what I really do want to mention is really that how our health and safety program has developed. It's really been to the demand of the workers. Like I've said, the day laborers and the immigrant workers that come through our organization are demanding these trainings. They're asking for them, and they're bringing other workers into them. They're collaborating with the knowledge that they take out of these trainings. We're able to provide these trainings in partnership with unions, with schools, with other community organizations, and have them be trainers who are from the community themselves. So we can really offer that a sensitive curriculum and a sensitive approach to teaching the day laborers, and also in the language that they understand. They're more likely to report in these cases. It's more likely I have workers coming and telling me they don't have a mask, and that when they asked for the mask, the employer didn't bring it. And this is important considering the statistics we've been discussing and the higher rates of injury that they face. Essentially, the positions that we're working in right now, would be kind of like a flashback in time before apprenticeship programs would exist. We don't have very good access to these apprenticeship programs whatsoever. Essentially, we need to be able to create a pathway into these. Right now, we're essentially organizing it ourselves. Our worker leaders are able to put on those hands-on skills trainings, peer trainings, and things like that. Aside from OSHA trainings, we do have a very difficult time getting into apprenticeship programs because of immigration status, among other factors. Creating a pathway to these unions' apprenticeship programs will essentially allow these workers that we're talking about as being a high risk and high concern group of workers is allowing their participation in these programs. They need to be able to receive the same training as the workers they're working alongside, or be able to access those sites or those jobs or those responsible employers that we want to succeed, and to control for the employers that are putting them at risk. To do that, we need to be able to reduce many different obstacles and burdens that these workers face in gaining access to those. Considering the high rate of injury to the lower amount of workers when it comes to Latino workers, immigrant workers, and people of color, the after act, the evaluation, our workers' ability to be engaging on the job is really what's going to push these employers to be responsible. And these are workers and employers that often, I think, fly under the radar of your traditional labor organizing. Essentially, I think with these numbers and statistics that we've been hearing today, we're here advocating to make sure that we're being responsible to those workers. We're making sure that they also have responsible employers, that they also have safe and healthy workplaces, and that they have access to those trainings. Worker centers work. This dynamic that we are able to have with the workers, with their employers, with job placement, with know your rights education, with workforce development, really creates an engaging and innovative dynamic that can help really transform these work sites that we're seeing are a big problem. So I thank you again for your time today, and I look forward to seeing how the evaluation goes and what opportunities is able to create out of this. I really do appreciate the space you've made for this.
Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Maritza Silva Farrell. I am a campaign director at Align, the Alliance for a Greater New York. We are a long-standing alliance of community and labor united for a just, sustainable New York. And thank you so much to all of you for having this hearing. It's a really important hearing, and I appreciate everyone who has actually make comments specifically on the importance of apprenticeship programs. So on my testimony, I will focus on a couple of things that I thought that were really crucial, specifically as you are going to be analyzing the way in which perhaps the Assembly is allocating funding for some of these programs and how can it be improved. So I might not read through this whole testimony, but I will just point out a couple things. One, that again, through training, we know that it makes it so that the work sites will be safe. As Charlene and others point out, it's really important to keep that in mind. And New York should go further to support existing union apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeship training programs. And what I want to say about this is that it's also important, just to echo what Christina has mentioned, to think about what are the pathways to ensure that non-union workers get into those apprenticeship programs. What are the resources that are going to be needed to allow that to increase, right? Because these apprenticeship programs will need funding, right? So I think that's a very important point in terms of how the Assembly can help. The other piece is just that the city and the state should do more in terms of penalizing employers with poor safety records, and one approach is to withdraw public subsidies. We know that New York provides significant financial support to many economic development projects, whether through the provision of subsidies, low-cost land, leasing of public land, direct appropriations, bond sales, and more. It is through provisions of this public support that the state and municipalities have the most leverage to set basic workplace safety and training standards. So I think that's really important, because that's where we can actually say, if you're using our public funding, our public spaces, where are the enforcement mechanisms to ensure that those workers working in those sites are protected. And I would just say here, like, New York should use its full powers as the providers of financial support to many construction projects to ensure that employers provide adequate training and to raise the bar for worker safety for all workers through the state. Here in New York City, some folks alluded to some of the accidents and deaths that happened last year, and I think we need to be more mindful of like stopping that from happening, and as much as we can, holding employers accountable, because some employers, as you all know, sometimes they change names. Developers and constructors are very creative. So it seems that we also need to start being more creative as to how we have more enforcement mechanisms. And as Christina just mentioned, the best way to enforce some of these issues is through the workers. Workers are the ones who are told to no wear helmets, or to say, don't worry about it, nothing will happen to you today, so just do the job. Those workers can come back to the community groups and community organizations and tell sort of them what's really happening. But those community groups also need resources for the apprenticeship programs. Those community groups need resources to be able to allow those workers to have the support that is needed. And with that, I will end my testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So thank you both for being here today, and thank you for your testimony. In particular, Nice, who happens to be in my district. I'm very, very, very happy that you're here and collaborating on great work that we've done in the past, and hopefully we'll continue to do so in the future. One of the things is, we talk about the job centers for day laborers, and we know that that's something very big in Jackson Heights, in that area. What do you think that we can be doing to help and build those job centers up more than we have right now, given the fact that we know there's a high concentration of day laborers there?
Mm-hmm. I think Maritza said it well in terms of resources and capacity. At this time, we're still pretty limited in terms of the connections we have to agencies, to unions, to other workforce development programs that might not traditionally see our members, and finding ways to deliver those services to them in a way that they're going to be able to receive it, understand it, and use it. So being able to kind of build those connections where it matters and where it might not have existed in the past is going to be able to bolster that. The resources, the capacity it takes to be able to work one-on-one with a worker and help develop that, as well as placing them in a job, as well as facilitating their training, does take a lot of capacity that the organization does need support in. So in terms of actually executing this work, it would look like more connection to trainings and more specialized trainings. Skills trainings are very important. That's really something we've created for ourselves. It's the workers that are there creating the hands-on workshops with their peers, because we really don't have access otherwise in a lot of circumstances. And then it's also really executing the information that we're getting. The dynamic way that our workers are being able to report exactly what's happening in their workplaces, making sure that agencies and departments can be responsive in enforcement. We've trained a lot of workers in the last year, and if anything, we've only seen more reports and less that we can do about it. In terms of the way that we have to intervene ends up being one-on-one with an employer, as opposed to making a demand in certain cases when we're talking about a mask. These turn into kind of the ways that we can find an immediate solution, as opposed to the delay or the complications or the maybe connections that end up getting missed between us and the important enforcers.
Right. So what specific ways do you think we can legislatively increase the rights and awarenesses and protections when it comes to the undocumented community, especially the undocumented workers?
Mm-hmm. I think a first important step would be regulating with the employers, really stepping in there to be protecting the workers. In the case that we've collaborated on in the past is with employment agency fraud, for example, is one example where you can intervene to make sure that employment agencies aren't sending workers who aren't qualified to jobs that may or may not even be there or may not be paying minimum wage. As well as employers in construction, a little bit more elusive, of course, but turn into the same kind of legislation enforcement rules and controls for those employers in terms of being responsible for any complaints we may have. I think in terms of greater legislation, I do appreciate the New York City Council for the support they've given worker centers in the last year. And I think it is an innovative approach to really finding the intersections of these issues like wage theft, like health and safety, and low-wage immigrant worker rights, to be able to kind of give the space and the capacity to find the solution in the way that we can sensitively be responding to each worker's particular situation.
Great, thank you.
Yep, my pleasure.
Maritza, does the line receive any state funding? Do you get state funding at all directly from us?
We don't.
You don't?
We don't.
How are you funded?
Mostly through foundations and some labor folks who support the work that we do. We've been working with, we're a community and labor coalition, so most of the funding is from labor support and foundations.
Okay. And how about NICE? Do you receive any workforce development funding or anything of that nature through the state?
I don't believe so. I can definitely double check and come back and give you that information. Right now, our funding is mixed between foundations and sitting funding for the majority of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And the you mentioned limited connections or access to, and I'm just going to list what you said, agencies, unions, and workforce development. Could you quantify that? I mean,
What do you mean?
What are the barriers? Why are you being limited to that access, and what are the barriers to developing more intensive collaborations with agencies and other folks who are working either on job training or work placement and things or enforcement of wage theft laws and things of that nature?
So your question is kind of how to...
I'm
Sorry,
just
I
going
apologize.
from your
Yeah.
testimony where you said that you have limited access to those
Right.
others. So I'm trying to identify what are the barriers, and if we can identify the barriers, then what can our responses be to help overcome those barriers?
So with the agencies, for example, one of the things that we've been coming across a lot are the fraudulent OSHA cards that often employers will give to workers, even charge the workers for them. When we call OSHA and we're trying to create a complaint about that, we end up kind of getting jumped from Department of Labor, really finding ways to kind of execute and, create action. Is lacking in terms of who we can call and who we can get support from. We do have excellent relationships with a lot of unions that do support our work in our worker center. Unfortunately, it is pretty difficult for our workers to get onto those jobs. Luckily, we can get a handful of folks that can enter the unions with a strong partnership. But the apprenticeship programs, be it with the state or be it with the unions, are typically exclusive when it comes to immigration status. So a lot of our workers just don't have access to those. Essentially, it would be open lines of communication at this point. The worker center movement is really growing and developing, and we're finding a lot of new information and a lot of new dynamics that we can work with in a different way than we could before. So now that we're coming across these things, to have an open line of communication and develop the openness to developing a partnership would really be the first step at this point. But like I said, it really is in terms of being able to call and enforce something, and also being able to get our foot into the door to some of these programs.
Okay. And you may or may not be able to answer this question, but do you have an observation at all on how effective the Wage Theft Act, which passed in 2010, has that helped you in enforcing violations of wage laws or hour laws or anything of that nature?
I think at this time we've actually been seeing a lot more wage theft, whether it's raised in awareness and also with our work, our location brings a lot of more people in. So I would say I see more wage theft or the same is what I would imagine. I wasn't with the organization in 2010, so I couldn't exactly talk about the difference. But our numbers have been increasing with our increased success and our increased reach. So when it comes to enforcing, it still ends up being a little bit limited after like a demand letter. When it comes to our, we're a small staff and we work with a lot of workers. So to being able to actually follow through on those cases, things like our wage theft legal clinic, where we collaborate with lawyers from Catholic Migration Services and Urban Justice Center, could definitely use some extra ups from connection to more ways to enforce some of the complaints or being able to bring it to fruition. A lot of them end up sitting unresolved.
Okay. And you have a legal department yourself, or you refer
No, we
that
don't.
out?
We refer out. We actually create these partnerships. So a lot of what we do is partnerships. So it's what we're very open to. It's a legal clinic that, for wage theft specifically, that we've developed these partners with Urban Justice Center here in New York and the Catholic Migration Services. We have no lawyers on staff, but we do have a very strong network of allies who we can call on and who are sensitive to our workers and their needs, and who we can count on are going to follow through and work with us in responding to them.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, ladies. Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Carl Hum, Executive Vice President of Management Services and Government Affairs, Real Estate Board of New York, REBNY. Hello.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the promotion. I'm actually Senior Vice President there.
You're senior, okay.
I'll take the promotion, though.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Chairs Bronson, Moya, Titus. My name is Carl Hum, and I am Senior Vice President for Management Services and Government Affairs at the Real Estate Board of New York, or otherwise known as REBNY. REBNY is a membership organization consisting of over 17,000 owners, developers, managers, and brokers of real property here in New York City. I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify before you on the important matter of workplace safety. I'll focus my comments specifically to construction safety that was touched upon at the beginning of this hearing. New York City has obviously seen a construction boom in the past several years due to a combination of growing population and rezonings that emphasize density. Construction activity, as measured by building permits issued, increased by 38%, from 5,824 permits issued in 2010 to 8,064 permits issued in 2014, reflecting the most recently available data. Along with the rise in construction activity, accidents reported to the New York City Department of Buildings also increased from 163 accidents in 2010 to 237 accidents in 2014, and most grievously, fatalities rose from 4 in 2010 to 16 in the year 2015. In an attempt to identify the causes and drivers of these accidents and fatalities, REBNY undertook an extensive study of all 926 accidents, including the 28 fatalities that were reported to the DOB from the 5-year period covering 2010 and 2014. We specifically relied on DOB data rather than OSHA reports because DOB's accident reporting requirements are actually much more stringent than OSHA, and DOB's reports contains a far more richer amount of detail than the OSHA reports. Our findings were released last month and are available on our website, rebny.com, but I will highlight for you 3 key findings from this study. Number 1, most fatalities occur at smaller sites, consisting of 9 or less stories. 79%, or 22, of the 28 fatalities reported between 2010 and 2014 occurred at buildings at less than 9 stories, and buildings of less than 5 stories account for 60% of these fatalities. The second key finding, 63% of the reported accidents are gravity-related, either the worker or the material falling. And interestingly, we also found that almost a third of the accidents reported, or 27%, is classified as quote-unquote other, which includes accidents involving work inattention, such as workers failing to wear protective gear. The statistics also indicate that there is no meaningful difference between the rate of accident type between small buildings, those are 9 stories or less, and larger buildings, or those who are 10 stories and higher. And the third finding is that smaller sites are 43% more likely than larger sites to be issued a safety violation when an accident occurred. In fact, the statistics show that as building height increases in categories from 10 to 19 stories, 20 to 39 stories, and finally for 40-plus stories, the incidence of violations not being issued increases. The statistics undeniably point to the conclusion that smaller sites need greater attention when it comes to instituting safety practices. Over the past few weeks, staff at REBNY has interviewed the construction management staffs of our members, some of who build the most technically complicated and technologically sophisticated sites, not only in New York City, but throughout the world. We did this to share not only our findings, but to identify recommendations to improve worker and construction safety. As with any diverse group, the opinions were voluminous and thoughtful. However, one consistent theme stood out. A culture of safety must be instilled throughout the entire crew. Everyone on the site, from the worker on up to the supervisor, must be invested and responsible for each other's well-being. Revenue will release a fuller set of recommendations in the next few weeks, but I would like to share some of the recommendations and best practices offered by this collection of construction experts that could be applied to smaller sites, specifically those consisting of 9 stories or less. Number 1, require OSHA 10 construction, supported scaffold 4, and documented fall protection training for all workers on site. Most accidents are gravity-related, and workers need to be fully trained in not only basic safety procedures outlined in the OSHA 10 construction module, but also fall protection through the supported Scaffold 4 course. Number 2, require all projects to give safety orientations to new hires with photo ID and OSHA card verification. Safety orientations and daily quote-unquote toolbox talks allows the workers and supervisors to communicate more effectively and preferably in language, to be updated daily on changing conditions pertaining to personnel assignments, equipment, weather, and other factors. And finally, require all projects to hold safety reorientations every 6 months for all personnel on site. This is a best practice among our members and goes to reinforce the culture of safety throughout the job site. I want to thank you again for the opportunity to testify and also applaud you for taking on this very important issue for the people of the state of New York. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for your testimony. Chairman Moyer, you want to start?
Thank you. Yeah. You have pointed out that a lot of these fatalities are in buildings that are less than 10 stories.
Correct. Less than nine
Less
stories
than
or
9
less.
stories, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And is it fair to say that these smaller sites are more likely to be non-union, therefore making it more dangerous at the work site?
I don't have the breakout of what is union and non-union. Frankly, I think that conversation of union versus non-union is a distraction to the central tenet that I portrayed in this testimony, is that the culture of safety has to be emphasized throughout the site.
Don't you think that what we've heard in the testimony is that the majority of non-union sites is where the fatalities are happening due to the fact that there is no training that is being provided, that the safety components are not being given to the workers? Is that something that you would agree that is a fair assessment to make?
In terms of
The non-union
characterizing
sites,
the testimony
categorizing.
this afternoon, so they certainly made that assertion. But I would say that, I mean, if the question is, are there unscrupulous contractors on these smaller sites? Are there folks who are trying to cut corners? Absolutely. There's no question about that. And, you know, it goes to Ms. Obernauer's point about inspections, about the limited resources that we have with regards to making sure that these sites are safe.
But not, so normally on non-union sites, they report less accidents than union sites do. So does that mean that they're...
I don't, is that,
That's what we've gathered from our conversation with people in the industry, with workers that have come and talked to our office, that basically have said that being on non-union sites, and we've had testimony, and time again we've heard people from constituents that are on non-union sites that are told not to report their injuries when they're injured on these sites. So the question is, does that mean that they're safer? Or is it just that accidents aren't being reported?
Well, without the statistics to show, for you know, to prove your point, I mean, the point of my testimony here this afternoon is to show that we've done the statistical analysis with regards to what are the drivers of these accidents. With regards to union versus non-union, again, it's I think that it's a valid discussion in some respects, but I think that with regards to safety, though, from where we have interviewed experienced construction managers over and over again, it's a culture of safety that needs to be emphasized.
So the report that you're providing, the report that you provide, does that have a breakdown of how many are union versus non-union sites? And will
No,
that have a
it does
breakdown?
not.
It will not have that.
No.
Got it.
But I will say this, though, is that in my interviews with construction managers that provided some of these best practices, and again, we'll be coming out with a report that includes a fuller set of recommendations, they included both union and non-union contractors.
And lastly, your report says that, in your testimony, you suggest that workers are required to take safety courses, including scaffold training and fall protection training. And should that training be required